just leave it like this.
Yeah, so you'll just do share screen and then share the screen wherever it's, do the screen part. So that way it'll show
Okay.
the whole thing, whatever session you have. Hold up. Yeah, should be good. And then we're recording that, so we're good. Awesome. Thank you so much for your help. I appreciate it.
And then when we're done, we'll just stop recording.
Yep, Jen, you don't have to stop recording in between.
How
it.
are you?
So,
Can I
Your
just,
job is-
I just want to confirm that I'm
Sure.
on there.
Thank you.
I think I put it on there early, just want to make sure.
We got. Oh, shoot.
Just go back. There you go.
Yep. Okay, we're good.
It should be on the desktop.
Yeah, we moved
It's
everything into.
this
a
Yeah, there
folder.
it is. Yeah, okay,
Great.
thank you.
I think we got everything.
Who's,
I remember.
I'm Chris
I'm
Mauer.
Michelle.
how are you? I'm the last one.
Awesome.
Yeah, I gotta go see her.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
I guess.
No, I think you're good because you're sharing the screen. Just keep that. You want to come up and we'll kind of get ready and keep everything on time today. Just- Like 2 minutes is a lifetime.
I know.
I'll have one.
Okay,
posters for you.
thank you. So this is on Zoom, but projecting to nobody. It's being
Right, we're just
recorded.
recording, yeah.
Okay.
Some of the sessions have had other
Participate, yeah. people popping in.
or I guess some of the presenters have to log in because they presented from other parts of the world. But this one, everybody's in person, so.
Okay.
All right, I have that it's 1:19. Our first presenter starts right at 1:20, so to keep everything on time, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Education and Outreach tract of the International Urban Wildlife Conference. My name is Michelle Haggerty. I work for Texas Parks and Wildlife. I'll be the moderator today. Our first presenter this afternoon is Amy Green, and her talk is entitled An Urban Nature Center Connecting People to Their Sense of Place and Sharing Space with City Wildlife.
Right. Hi, thank you. It's a long title for a talk that's probably slightly different than most of everything we've seen this week. But with the theme of everything being about telling your story, what I'm about to share with you is how we're connecting your story and the work that you do to all the people who aren't you and don't do what you do and who don't know anything about what you do. So how do we get them there, right? If you think about, there's a reason you're here today. There's some little spark somewhere that got you going down this path. And where did you find that? And so the work that I do is to help connect and everybody else to that, all of the non-experts to the work that you do. So this is right in Detroit, one of the places where we do a lot of our work. So I'll get you rooted here. The Belle Isle Nature Center is operated by the Detroit Zoological Society. I'm the Nature Center's director. I work for the zoo, but I run a nature center 17 miles away from the zoo on an island in the heart of Detroit. The island is called Belle Isle. It's a very foreshortened view of it. I zoomed it in for you a little bit. And Belle Isle used to be a city park for the longest time, and for the past 10 years, it's been a state park. For a little reference, up in the upper left, that's Detroit. There's a bridge to the island. On the upper right, that's Canada. So we're about 1,000-acre state park in the heart of the Detroit River, right downtown, which is an unusual place for a nature center. And just a little bit more of like the map view of how downtown we are, with a little bit of green space there as well. And so that means a lot to us, and we have to think a lot about what we mean to the folks who visit. Not everybody who goes to the state park goes for the nature center, right? And this is the nature center. It's a brown and yellow 1970s nearly windowless building. And so you'll be hearing about the renovations that we've been doing, programming that we do. There are some green spaces on the island, all kinds of walks, year-round education and programming, and all ages. Those are some of our teen interns there. So I think the only stats and data you'll get all day from me is we see about 100,000 people a year, which is pretty good for a nature center. And all of this and much more captures some of the programming that we do, where and why. So most of what we do is of those 100,000 visitors who come see us, most of what we do is off-site, that is grant funded, that informs what we're doing inside, that I can't wait to show you. But we work with Detroit Public Schools, local early childhood centers. We've got summer and winter nature camps, adult programs. That one in the events is exciting to me. About 500 people came out when we were closed indoors in the dead of winter, 30 degrees, for an event outdoor only, just to see what's going on outside in the city, which is a kind of a big deal. Online stuff, partnerships, there's partnerships with universities. So we do a lot, and I ran out of room on that slide, and more, right? So that takes us to another place where we do a lot of our work. This is right by one of our community centers. And in the pandemic, that really pushed us out and took us to where the children and the people were, intentionally filming when we couldn't be with the kids, programming to connect them to their sense of place and belonging. And we would hear when we were playing back the videos, like, that's my school, that's my center, which is the point. When you're on an island in the river and over the river and through the woods, and you're 3, right? It means nothing. So how are we really connecting people? How are we validating people in their nature, right? My nature and your nature might not look the same. How do we, so this is all informing like what we're doing, where we do. How are we helping to celebrate what's already there and notice it? And how are we kind of breaking down some of those barriers of like nature is somewhere else and you have to have special gear, like, you know, sitting on your front porch, smoking and looking at birds is nature. That's okay. That's important. And that's something that we need to understand. And we've got some grants that we're working on right now and better understanding where our blind spots are, where the gaps are, and how we can learn more about how to be meaningful to everybody's kind of path along this journey. So a lot of our programming that we do is, like I said, right in the city. And I'm a former teacher. I get really frustrated with a deficit mindset with nature that I see at children in nature conferences, right? Like there's a lack of something. We really, really don't see it that way. We're looking for what is there. And this is one of my favorite pictures that celebrates that. We'll meet with the teachers first. What are your challenges? What's missing? What would you like to do? And here we've got all these kids. This is their daycare play space, right? And their insect net. Look, like it's abundant, right? If we help turn that around. And so this is like, these magic moments are what inform the recent renovation that we did at the Nature Center, where we're telling that story of the work that you do. And so when I'm working with a lot of our teens and older kids, this is another picture of one of our community centers that we work at. what do you notice, right? And so the teacher in me is, I'm seeing things and I want to be mindful of time. If you want to raise your hand and share some nature you notice, I won't stop you. But I see, you know, the squirrel nests in the background, right? And that's a chance to build in some vocabulary. Did you know that's called a drag? There's a little garden around the corner there, which you can't see. And there's abundance, right? There are assets if we're looking for them and recognizing them. So how does that inform our little brown and yellow building, and how are we connecting people with that? So about a year and a half ago, we received some funds to make some renovations that were long overdue. We do have a commitment to the city of Detroit. We are the Detroit part of the Detroit Zoo. The zoo itself is in the suburbs. So as we were thinking about these renovations, we're thinking about like, what are these shared spaces, right? How can we look at animals and people together, and what next, right? What's our goal? And we want everybody to thrive, all the big things. You'll see some more pictures as we go through, but as we were developing and designing this, we're looking at science skills, connecting with nature, people feeling empowered in their own places, not out there, right? But where we already are in our community. Because we're operated by a zoo, we wanted to really elevate the habitats for the zookeepers, for the animals, to make it not look like your uncle's basement in the 80s with old fish tanks, which people loved. And to really kind of push empathy, sensitivity, sensory exploration, conservation with the imagery that we did there. So this is what you see now when you walk in the front door, which means the world to me. This right here was original, like traditional old nature center ski lodge. This was all added. And what you see there is truly what we're all about, right? The often overlooked, this stuff like dandelions, right? What's in the cracks in the sidewalk? What's already there where you are, and how can we get the kids in to notice it? What you don't see is that's like a McDonald's play place in there. You can crawl up and through, and there are these little ant tunnels, and you can move seeds and soil. And in everything in our graphics that we designed, we're not preaching, right? But we're helping notice. As you're crawling through those tunnels, there are things that nature left behind. There are things that people left behind. How can you tell the difference? And in the murals, and this is Turtle Cove, which was kind of original. The mural is new. Everything was intentional. Over on that side there, there's some more natural spaces as you go along. This is a visual directly from Belle Isle, a place called Hipster Beach. So we're going into the infrastructure, and every animal, you guys will get this more than anybody I've ever shared this to. Every single habitat in the whole nature center, it's like a big donut shape, by the way, is the mural is based on a location where that animal was actually seen in the city. So we got iNaturalist, geolocated that animal, it's all local wildlife in there, translated that to Google Street View, translated the Google Street View to this vector art. So it's all super place-based, and that was a lot of fun. And everything that we do in our graphics, instead of a zoo that's like, this animal lives here in the world and it's this big, we're trying to help reinforce like, you're part of this and you matter as part of it. So how can you help? You know, here's where they're at risk. Don't dump things. We got city infrastructure in there. So we have a replica Detroit sewer tunnel right inside the hallway. Some little fake water. We do some adopt to drain programming, and those little kind of sewer circular things on the side we painted with conductive paint. So when you touch them, you might see and hear a rat or possum. So again, just helping people explore the spaces that you're thinking about this all the time. Not everybody else is, and want to tell your story, right? As we're getting into the conservation part now, you go around the curve there, and there's the city skyline. The zoo does a lot of work with the mud puppies in the Detroit River for like 15 years now, some conservation work, doing surveys as an indicator species, some population tracking. And so we're showing the kids who come in, or all the folks, there's not a lot of techie stuff in the nature center, but some of the touch screens, we're all trying to show like not old scientists, but showing kids that they're part of this too. So the community involvement part, girls from a local juvenile detention center have come in to make mud puppy homes and put them in the river to build empathy. This is pretty short. I don't know how to play this very good. This is like every video we tried to get like 45 seconds long max, so that kids could see themselves in these roles. or in your role one day, right? So we get a little bit of data collection. We've got some artists with the clipboards. We've got some replica mud puppies, so they're doing some, they have pit tags in them and they scan them. They work with our scientists doing this. And so they get to go to these sites while our curator amphibians is working on the actual mud puppies. They're right next to them working on these models. All right, this is a really fun one too. As we go around the curve, you can see up in the right corner, those are our friends from the downtown boxing gym who we worked with when we were closed for the pandemic. We just took the work right outside. And right in the murals you're seeing, you can see the, in both pictures, the wires and the lines. We do trail camera work with them every week, just getting the kids into it. They didn't know that we were doing this renovation. And so that's their actual building put right into the murals. Like, we do this work with you where you are, and now we've got it here where we are. So that's kind of my love letter to them. Like, thank you for being with us all the time. We've got some trail camera images right next to them. Detroit has pheasants. That's a whole nother thing to talk about later, but we try and integrate, like, you can find about animals from tracks, from the trail cameras. So that's integrated right in. And again, helping people understand who've never done this work in their life, who happen to be on a picnic on a state park and come into our nature center, that there is research happening. This is another personal favorite of mine that takes people out of it a little bit and helps our guests understand how animals and the world around them interact. So these bees, if you move them, they've got like black lights in them. So you see how they see the world a little differently. The plants around them light up. If you're a Detroiter, you would notice, besides for the fact that there's city infrastructure and everything there, you would notice that there's a pink Cadillac and a Ford truck. So that's all integrated. The Motown Museum, that wall has some interactives where you're rolling pups down and learning that not only bees are pollinators, but flies and moths and birds. And so if that animal and that plant have a symbiotic relationship, it lights up. So you can explore for a while and figure that out. Phragmites in the rat snake habitat. Oh, and our zookeeper named every animal after a Detroit musician. There's sidewalks and billboards. So again, it's very unusual for a zoo or a nature center to amplify the urban nature. And so it's really, really exciting to do this. And then, and I'm leaving a ton of stuff out that we have in this small space. It's only about 10,000 square feet and half of it is an auditorium. But one of the things that I wanted to share with you today and maybe ask you some questions about connects it to this, right? Like, as you were here, you notice that everybody's leaving their mark, their opinion, how they're feeling about stuff. And if you left something on there, perhaps you feel a little bit more connected to this conference, right? And so we've got this wall, it's acrylic, and those are reusable sticky notes, which are really cool. And that sign up there is designed to be changed, right? So I might ask you, what next? What should we ask next? But every day, my favorite thing is to come in and read what people are writing on this wall, because they can just, we wipe it off, they add more. And if I had a mind like all of you, I would probably find some grad students to like analyze all of this data of how people are already connecting, because what they leave behind is pretty magical, right? People see pheasants every day, coyotes, and not like this is all unprompted, right? This is all the work that you do. Bees in the yard and garden, awesome. In Vegas, people like what they see in Lebanon. So it's nice to see the different places. There's some good artists. Let's see here, lichen, and like there's some serious stuff in here, right? Coyotes in Detroit on the east side and Island. Now we're like honing the specifics. I think there was a whole session all about birds and cats today or yesterday. Cicadas. Oh yeah. So sad. Very specific, right? People connecting to themselves, their family. That's, to me, that's what it's all about, like the human part of all of this. Squirrels. I think this is one of my literally everywhere. I love it so much. And then we see it outside too of our own nature center. this is an old Facebook post of ours. This picture is right out by our dumpster. And that other one is the mural on our wall. So like it all came together quite beautifully for us. And if you do want to see more of the Belle Isle Nature Center, there's a website called Able Eyes. So we're really working hard on accessibility. It's like a social story and a virtual tour, and you can go through the whole entire thing. Like you go into the bathroom everywhere, so people can see. You know, is it accessible? Can I wheel around and things like that? All right, there's a lot more to say. Working Studio in Cincinnati helped us like take it out of our brains and put it into that beautiful, just beautiful design. And Ann Higley is who did like the animal habitats. But for me, like I haven't ever seen a nature center so focused on centering people and helping them think about how they're sharing their space with other living things. But I bet there's a lot more to do, and this is only phase one, right? So I'm happy to answer questions that you have, but I'd also love to hear what's missing, right? What else can we do next to keep helping people connect to the nature around them and just notice it, right? So after you leave there, you might step out and look at the world just a little bit differently now and look under a rock or something like that. And maybe in 20 years, this room will be filled with folks who made their connections through that. So anyway, thank you. And I'm happy to hear questions or comments or advice. 3 minutes. Okay, yes.
That was really a lot of fun. One thing, I haven't been to Detroit in many years, but one thing that I think Detroit has, which is an asset for you, but maybe not for everybody, is a lot of kind of accidental open space.
Yes, I did write all the transects for you, and I just haven't gotten like, all my time was dedicated to this. We want to know, like, that's really different, right? Compared to most cities. There's a ton of vacant lots in
I
space.
didn't want to use that term, but yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. But the other thing is, I've been to a lot of museums that try to do things to kind of future-proof their displays, and many of them are technology-based. And what's interesting is that because technology changes so fast, those displays in particular are not future-proof. But you know, the idea is that they want to be able to change displays, change what they're presenting, make sure that it's always kind of up to the minute for the audience. And I think that's a real challenge. I'm wondering if you've thought about that at all.
Well, yes, in two ways, right? I don't think we'll get everything perfect, but we only have 2 real like screens to mess around with in the whole place that are served by computers. And those can be changed pretty easily by design. So our trail camera, like we can just change it out when we have new images. The rest of it is really like physical, like moving pieces, which it exponentially are used more. And that is really related to the framework of everything else. Like, can you design your own backyard for yourself and nature, right? And so people can set up an empty lot, a yard, a balcony, and move these pieces around. Like if maybe they plant flowers and then bees come, or maybe they put in water and birds come. So it's designed to be a little bit more tactile. And I'll just keep coming to these conferences and asking you questions, and as more information is revealed. But this is like super basic on purpose, right? Looking under, just taking a minute to notice it for, like I said, all of the people who aren't you, who don't do this for a living, to help connect them to that. There was one more question. Is there time? No? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker will be Marcus Mueller. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And his presentation is called "The Urban Wildlife Damage Management is Wildlife Conservation."
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I love the concept of storytelling, and I hope I'm able to tell my story a little bit today too, and fill everybody in on a piece of my work that is focused certainly around damage management, but the education component of it as well. So by the last day of the conference, I don't think anybody is surprised by the idea that urban development is continuing. It's not going away anytime soon. And with it is an increased opportunity for interactions between humans and wildlife. The high densities of urban adapted species live amongst us in these urban areas. And the opportunity for these interactions is higher than ever. These interactions can occur in a host of different ways, from something as seemingly as great as backyard bird feeding and backyard bird watching, to animals living in the house, seeing deer when you're driving around at night, coyotes and whatnot. But what's important is that all these interactions carry with them a strong emotion by whoever's interacting with them, whether it's someone who's really getting fired up about seeing birds in their backyard, or terrified because they saw a coyote run through their backyard at one night. These emotions are very important as we navigate these interactions, especially when we're talking about some of the more negative interactions that turn into wildlife conflict situations. So for the purpose of this talk, I'm focusing mostly on the small scale conflict situations, mostly around animals living in the house, under the deck, in the attic, that sort of thing. Wildlife conflict can exist at a whole host of different scales, especially in urban areas. But like I said, for the purposes of this conversation, it's focused mostly at that small individual homeowner, individual properties level. So what kind of conflicts are we talking about? Again, animals living in the attics, under decks and sheds and whatnot, most often happening because these areas are providing something that they need from their habitat perspective. So a dark, secluded attic, the overhead protection of a deck or a shed, a cavity in a wall is perfect for a cavity nesting bird, that sort of thing. And all these situations all these situations can cause things like property damage and even some health and safety concerns for humans. So they're not something that necessarily we want to take lightly. They need management and they need solutions. And the species that we're dealing with for most of these are, again, they're lumped into different groups certainly, but most often are going to be categorized by their ability to use anthropogenic resources. So the things that we put on the landscape, the way that we develop it, they are fantastic at taking advantage of these resources. So with that with the kind of the interaction and the conflict side of things, these encounters oftentimes in urban areas can be the primary way that people engage with urban wildlife. And so it really can help to, or it really can shape the way that they see wildlife if the only way that they're interacting with them on a daily basis, or throughout their entire experience, is this negative situation where animals are living in the attic or keeping them up at night, scaring the kids in the backyard. That can really play into the narrative around urban wildlife if this is the primary means of engagement. Additionally, traditional means of outreach and education can often, doesn't reach these folks who are primarily or interacting this way, leaving them to base their narrative around solely these experiences. So what do we do about it? When we're talking about managing wildlife conflict at this smaller scale, more often than not, the folks that are providing on the ground face-to-face resources for homeowners are going to be nuisance wildlife control operators, or NUCOs. That's what I do. I own Skedaddle Humane Wildlife Control in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am a nuisance wildlife control operator by trade. But these professionals can exist in a whole range of sizes, shapes. It could be a one person in a pickup truck, could be a nationwide company, and just about everything in between. But the sole purpose of these is to provide this type of resource and this type of service for people who are dealing with wildlife conflict situations, primarily in and around their homes. Other groups certainly provide consultation and education, but often lack the ability to be that on the ground physical presence, managing these situations, which proves to be the reason that these nuisance wildlife control operators are in such a strong position to manage these. Urban wildlife management in general is very challenging because of all of the people involved, all the small tracts of land that are involved, and the uniqueness of every single situation. So even thinking about my day-to-day work when I'm working with different raccoon in house situation type thing, every single house is going to be different. Every single person I deal with is going to be different. They're going to have different goals for their own property, for their own house, different attitudes and opinions, and those need to be factored into the way that we manage those situations. Traditionally, most nuisance wildlife control operators focus their service and their methods around a trap and relocate or a trap and euthanize type of service. Some of them will provide exclusion services as well, but the majority of them are building a service around a trap and relocate type service. There are some benefits to a service like this. It's quick. It can provide quick results for a homeowner experiencing a conflict situation in their attic or whatnot. And oftentimes the homeowner will get to see this individual animal that was causing an issue physically removed from the property and give them that perceived peace of mind knowing that that individual was removed from the situation. In certain targeted cases as well, it can remove an overly habituated individual animal from the situation. But there's certainly some shortcomings to this method as well. One of the biggest ones focuses around resource availability and the idea that if all we're going to do is move an animal out of the situation, that still leaves all the resources that it was using available for all of the other animals in the area. This vacuum effect is very powerful, and it's something that is a big reason why exclusion-based services are so important. Moving around animals that are adapted to these anthropogenic resources can also bring about other concerns as well, both in the areas that we take them from and the areas that we move them to. Oftentimes these animals, like I said, are adapted to the anthropogenic resources. And if we take them to more of a quote unquote natural area, they may not be equipped to adequately find the resources they need to survive in those new areas. There's also concerns about disease spread. There's been certain areas of the country and even outside of the country that have limited the spread of, or the ability to move wildlife around for disease purposes in particular. In my experience, there is a very strong narrative around the way that we manage wildlife conflict situations like this. There's the expectation that the solution is going to be to take the animal back to nature, that it doesn't belong. And the way that we choose to manage these situations can very strongly reinforce that if our go-to solution every single time is to pluck that animal from the situation and either euthanize or remove it to a new area. So by doing that, we can really double down that idea that the problem is the animal when the reality is really the fantastic habitat that we've created for a host of anthropogenically adapted species. Similarly, we encounter a narrative that these conflict situations can arise because we're developing natural areas and these animals are simply looking for somewhere else to go, which in certain situations can have a lot of truth to it, but more often than not with a lot of the species that we're dealing with, the idea is that these animals are thriving because of the changes to the landscape that we're making. The shortcomings of our own construction, the way that we build houses is the reason that they have so much available habitat rather than somebody else just looking for somewhere to go. So what can nuisance wildlife control operators do? Well, we have the opportunity to craft a new narrative. We serve a very unique population of people that oftentimes, like I said, has their entire opinion of urban wildlife shaped around these conflict situations and may have a pretty negative perception on it because of that. But if we can build the way that we handle these conflicts in a way that doesn't necessarily overemphasize the impact that an individual animal may have and can rather focus on it from a habitat perspective and find out why that animal is doing what it's doing in the first place, address the underlying issues and work to foster more of an appreciation for the wildlife being there in the first place. It can go a long way to changing that narrative and hopefully shifting away from kind of what's been going on so far. So how do we do that? The first step is we need to actually find solutions that provide comprehensive problem-solving answers for these homeowners that we're dealing with. This focuses on exclusion primarily. So first and foremost, getting the animals out, but then addressing why they're there in the first place and excluding them from getting back into the house in the future. We need to combine an expert knowledge of species biology, natural history, along with an expert knowledge of home construction and pair the two to understand how we can better build wildlife-proof houses, how we can exclude animals from existing built houses as well. We also need to do a better job of managing the expectations of the stakeholders involved, the clients that we're working with, in the sense that we need people to understand that no amount of indiscriminate trapping is necessarily going to reduce the probability of a conflict situation to zero. There's always going to be raccoons in the city. There's always going to be squirrels in the city. And our best approach to manage these conflicts ongoing is to focus on excluding them and doing what we can to address the shortcomings of, like I said, our own construction. Taking these approaches can also play a big, or can really minimize the disturbance to the local wildlife communities as well. Again, both the ones that are in the area of the conflict situation, but wherever the other wildlife communities that previously would have had wildlife brought to them as well. So removing an animal from the area with these known resources is just going to create an invitation, and we need to make that a big point in the way that we go about our services to make sure that more animals don't just come in and take advantage of the same resources. The live or lethal removal can certainly be a tool in the toolbox of a wildlife manager, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the only tool or the only magic pill for all of these individual situations. The solutions that we come up with should also focus on keeping family units together, especially during sensitive times of the year where we know that, say, raccoon babies are present in almost every one of these houses where they're living in with people. These exclusion-based methods can work really well in an area to keep babies in the same area that mom's familiar with and knows where her resources are, as well as provide the homeowner peace of mind that they're not going to be able to get back in. And then bringing back the release concerns in that area that we're bringing the animal previously may have brought animals to. That also may disrupt the local wildlife communities out there, not only on the individual level of the animal that you're bringing there, but whatever's already living there is also going to have their community disrupted by additional wildlife being brought there. The education piece is huge. So obviously agencies value the education aspect of wildlife management, especially in urban areas. In Milwaukee, we don't have an agency wildlife biologist. That role was converted into a primarily education outreach position. And I think that just demonstrates how important that education component is from a management perspective in those urban areas. And we as nuisance wildlife control operators need to have the same, priority to the education side that we have as well. We need to help people understand the issues that the underlying issues that they're dealing with are primarily due to the way that we decide to build houses. And when we build houses, especially in new construction and whatnot, they're not built with wildlife in mind. They're built with things like water and wind and elements in mind, but they remain very vulnerable to wildlife. And if we can address those issues, we can address those underlying or those conflict situations. This is a really great opportunity to reframe the conflict from being a situation where the problem is the individual animal living in the house, but rather the problem is, again, the way that we build houses, and reframing it in a way that takes it away from the individual animal and puts it on something that we can control can help to shape that new narrative to foster more of an appreciation for the wildlife that's around us. There's also a great opportunity to coordinate with other organizations as a nuisance wildlife control operator. I think it's an area where we can represent the private sector in wildlife management and the role that we can play in the bigger picture of wildlife management. There's also a great opportunity to sync up with agency personnel on these outreach and education opportunities to provide consistent messaging across the board so that folks aren't hearing different messages from different organizations, that we can all be on the same page and build up a better level of outreach that way. I think there's also a fantastic opportunity for young professionals in the wildlife damage world. We're never going to get away to a point where we don't have wildlife conflict, especially in urban areas. And the more that we can build up the wildlife damage professional as a real career path with great opportunities for people that can provide really great service for homeowners, but also a really rewarding career path where you get to be a problem solver and see the look on the face of somebody who hasn't slept in a week because they've had a raccoon in their attic all week. It's a really rewarding career path that I think has a lot of opportunity to continue to be developed as well. And then from a certification standpoint, I think there's a lot of opportunities to grow as a profession here. We have a certification program right now. It's mostly focused around species biology and the kind of the techniques and the how-to behind the management side, but it doesn't necessarily give us the backbone we want to see from the education side of things either. So I think that if we put more priority into those accreditation programs from an education perspective and really highlight the role and responsibility that we have as wildlife professionals, that would really go a long way to just building up the profession as a whole. So how does this fit into the bigger picture? Two goals of urban wildlife managers and researchers are to mitigate wildlife conflict and to encourage a connection to nature. And nuisance wildlife control operators are in a great position to do that on a daily basis with people living with these situations day to day. We have a great power, and we need to foster that responsibility in and amongst our own profession to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. And by using the tools and the techniques focused on solving these problems comprehensively and permanently, minimizing disturbance to these wildlife communities and educating our clients every opportunity that we can, nuisance wildlife control operators can certainly play a bigger picture in the conservation role going forward. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Where I talk to landowners, one of the biggest issues is the cost sometimes, have the ability cost. You feel like, I work closely with some operators in my state, and some of them are really great, but some of them will say, well, it's my bread and butter. So do you find like, does this way impede upon, you feel it impedes on the control operator's ability to make money, and or do you think it makes it cheaper in the long run for the landowner that's gonna have it hedge them out? So that's the biggest competition. There's not ways to fund it, like, I don't have ways to fund it.
For sure. No, I guess I can think of two things. I identify a lot more with the latter half of that it's certainly an investment upfront for people, but the amount of times that we've come out to homes that have had a trapper out and kind of came to the conclusion that, all right, we tried to trap, didn't work, tried to trap, didn't work. Now we're going to go through and, focus on some more wildlife proofing. That's a really, really common scenario that we come across. And two, when I first started this back in 2017 in Milwaukee, I really thought that the majority of the work that we'd be doing was going to be focused in, kind of that donut around the city, the suburbs, the, middle class to higher income areas. But at the end of the day, like looking back on it over the last couple of years, I mean, we service just as many houses. You can basically look at it like a dartboard, and wherever in the city we're doing work, whether it's areas of different income levels, different socioeconomic statuses, there really isn't much of a there's not much difference in the areas that we're working. Everybody's dealing with the same problems, and we're able to provide solutions kind of wherever it's happening. I kind of went into it expecting to see a lot more variance, but I'm still really excited to see how much we're able to get to just about every part of the city that way. Yeah.
So Georgia is working on a certification program also through our Georgia Pest Control Association, continuing education stuff.
Yeah.
It's currently required for like rats and other structural stuff, but not the wildlife side. Is that similar to what you guys are seeing in Wisconsin? Do you guys have continuing education programs through your professional organization?
There definitely are those opportunities. They're not necessarily required to operate though.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot, I think it's kind of, person to person choice on whether or not they do them. And
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of homeowners asking about them either. So from an incentive perspective, it's, I don't know if the incentive's there right now.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what we're seeing in Milwaukee, in
But
Wisconsin.
I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more on yours.
Yeah, for sure.
Time for one more question.
Any other questions? Sure.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
in Texas, it's privately owned predominantly, so in Wisconsin, you have similar situation, are you able to release wildlife if that scenario is the scenario you choose, and what do you have to do in order to get that done?
Yeah, so to my knowledge in Wisconsin, it's all about having the landowner permission to release wildlife. We don't do any of that through our services, but to my knowledge, that's how a lot of the other more trap-based organizations will do it. They'll just have to get the landowner's permission. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Adam Ronke, using ArcGIS story maps to visualize the story of wildlife in our cities.
All right. Well, I didn't expect a full room on the last day. But I've been doing this for 18 years and I have some extension colleagues in here. So I also know that your brain can only take in as much as your butt can endure. So we're going to keep it short and sweet. And if you're looking for p-values, you're in the wrong presentation. Okay. So, and I'm sure you've seen plenty of those this week. And I love my modeling friends and not poking fun. We need you. But I wanted to talk to you today about our project in Jackson, Mississippi, which I'm hoping will have broader impacts within the UN network that we are a part of. I hope you enjoyed the presentations yesterday. And I'm hoping this will be a vehicle to maybe highlight some of that work along with our own. So we'll get right to it. First, I want to give credit to this conference that it was 4 years ago today, John, that popped up on Facebook, that I was sitting in a room right where you are, my first one of these, relatively new to the urban sphere of wildlife management. I've been dabbling in it for years, but fully into it now, focused on that. And I was sitting there listening to our UN Indy partner, Travis Ryan, and I know partners in the back and some other crews here. And he was giving a really great presentation, yet another one without p-values, I remember that. And he admitted to me later it's because I didn't have enough to analyze at that point, but he also has a history background and training. And they had a database that they used to basically run through their sites in a visual way. It wasn't through story maps, but he was able to tell the story in the context of these sites, and particularly one site downtown, and don't get after me if I forget the whole story, but there was a site downtown that had a higher species index than the other sites around it. And he was trying to figure out what it was without being able to run modeling at that point. And he looked into a deeper context of the cultural aspects and the history, both land use history, but just history in general, the human cultural side. And that just really stuck with me in the meeting. I don't know if it was because it was so different than the other presentations, or if it just really connected with me in the sense of what I do in extension. And it actually stuck with me the whole flight home, which is pretty far from Portland. And it stuck with me and stuck with me. I talked to Travis a couple more times after. He goes, I can't believe it really stuck that well with you, man. So, but I give credit to him, and initially 4 years ago and getting this thing stuck in my head. And the UN folks that are in the room know that I've not stopped talking about it since then. So, and I really thought this is a way that maybe we could, or I could fulfill my extension mission and have other extension colleagues that are in the UN group, and hoping even if you're not an extension, that could help fulfill your mission. And ultimately, as UN works so well, it's collaborative in the sense that everyone contributes one way or another. And I was hopeful, since I am not a modeler, I'm also not a GIS guy, so again, here I am talking about GIS, that maybe this was one way that I could help and get back to the network that's given us so much in so few years in Jackson. So with that, what is an ESRI story map? That's pretty straightforward. How many people have used story map? Oh, good. You're probably better at it than I am. Good. All right. Well, we'll talk afterwards. But as you know, it's a mixed media digital platform that visualizes data through many, many means. Obviously, maps, imagery, timelines, video, dashboards. And if you have full access to the ESRI platform, you have a lot more and a lot more things that I don't know how that work, but there's a lot of other things that you can plug into this to enhance the map, including the map itself, tying it to a geodatabase. But we decided to focus on using the free basic version that's available, because the UN network is a very diverse group, as you saw yesterday. And many of those institutions probably don't have access to the full suite of ESRI products because it's expensive, very expensive in a lot of cases. And they also may not have the people on staff that can dedicate the time to it or have the technical expertise with it. So the free basic version is perfect for someone like me because it does not require GIS knowledge, okay? Even though I have some, I've taken plenty of courses, I just do not use it that often to remember how to do it. And I get frustrated with things like that, including mechanics. So, but I try not to throw things in the office as much as possible. Okay, it also doesn't require domain hosting. As you get more advanced, that may be the way you want to go. I'm also not a graphic designer, so I'm going to stop there with all the other technology speak, but and also allows a lot of mixed media at different levels. So, but if you went through any of the trainings here, and the whole theme of this conference is telling your story and storytelling, I'm not going to reiterate a lot of that, but one thing I was told by John Cartwright, a co-author of ours, and runs our extension wing of GIS training to municipalities across the board and many other groups, It's Adam, a lot of people can make story maps. Problem is they can't tell stories. Okay, and I'm not saying that I'm the best storyteller either, especially in the written format. There's probably a lot of us that are not that way. We weren't trained that way. We were trained to get to the point, right? So identify your target audience, okay, defining your key takeaways, you know, the hook, always the word that they use, okay, creating content inventory, which is really important in general, but specifically important with this, with all the different media that you're operating with, because it's coming from all different directions, and really getting an understanding of where it is and where it's coming from, so you can give appropriate credit, because this is a digital platform and people will let you know, okay, if you don't do that correctly. Okay, and then ultimately drafting an outline. Now, this isn't like storytelling 101. There's a lot more to it, but these are just some key points to think about if you're thinking about getting into this. Okay, so let's talk about the Jackson Urban Wildlife Project. This is the header on the top of the story map for our project. For our purpose and function, we had three main goals, and we're going to talk mostly about the first one, a little bit about the second one, and hope and dreams about the third one. Okay, it was really just to create a home base for our program. I'm a team of one, and I've got really great partners and really great apprentices and interns over the last 3 or 4 years. And most of this and everything else I do is because of them. And we just needed a home base to highlight what we are doing at the very get-go. A lot of people use story maps just for their own lab websites because it's that easy to use. So it's something else to think about. I'm also thinking about the extension folks of using it for reporting, give a visual aspect where all your phone calls, and emails, and site visits are coming from. So something else to think about. But we needed a home base. The second part was eventually work towards where it could interact with UN data and other educational platforms. And then hopefully, if we get really fancy with some of our approaches, maybe it could actually be even adapted or spun off to be a decision support tool for municipalities and planners. So I'll give you a second, get your phones out and go ahead and get the QR code. Hopefully it'll work. I tested it like 5 different ways, so including in this room, but I'll give you a second to do that. There's not a test at the end, but it keeps me from having to switch back and forth and swearing at the computer since they're recording. And for the people at home, they get more of a consistent approach. Is it working?
No internet.
No internet? I see some head bobs. All right, I got thumbs up. We're moving on. Sorry, folks. Running out of time. But so if you can scroll down through this, I'm going to give you the foundation of how it's set up, and then I'm going to give you just still shots of what you're looking at. But my version is going to be the desktop version. You're looking at the phone version, so you'll see the difference. So very straightforward, right? Linear, straight down, pretty straightforward, like everyone's website for a basic project. Nothing too sexy, as they say. Okay, straightforward. So you got the banner up top and the tabbing across the top, which will become very important here momentarily. And then you scroll down a little bit more and you got the introduction to the project. We also have an intro video. You're welcome to listen to it, and it won't disturb me if I hear it from up here. Okay, I've listened to it 1,000 times as we edited it. Okay, and if Maureen's in here from Arkansas, it's her student Becca that actually drew the short straw to get the video host job for that. So if you scroll down, the big part you get into is the map tour, and there's many ways you can display this if you're familiar with this program. But you have a sidecar over here. This is the way we chose to do it. Sidecar over here and let the map be the focus. Now on the phone, you're looking at it's not perfect. There's some work that needs to be done on it. But you can scroll in there and hit one of those points and it will bring you right to the site. Or you can scroll down below the map and you can hit one of these sites and it will scroll right into it. So whichever way you're kind of driven, that will get you there. You also notice that we have the 3-second, 30-second, and 3-minute rule as far as getting information. You got 3 seconds, you can get that information in your head. And we'll talk about the 30 and 3-minute here momentarily, okay? So if you scroll down from that, you see the highlight photos that we have. And I know Arkansas and a couple other sites have kind of a similar setup as this because it is a little bit rigid. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then we have a help us out section and some other contact information that you can see that we'll talk about here a little bit. So phase 1 review, from just talking to some of our partners internally and some of our colleagues, The pros, yeah, it met the goal of, and this is not a scientific survey, this is us talking, okay? Provides, I told you, no p-values. Provides basic home base for our audience for the time being. It's not too time consuming and it's quite easy to update. The cons, it can be clunky. Anyone that use it agree that it's clunky? It can be clunky and it can be rigid on design, although it improves every month as they add more things to it. It's very linear. I'm probably the most linear to a fault thinker that I know, but it's even too linear for me. It's a lot of scroll and you can get viewer fatigue with that. That's why the tabbing function is so important, but even that's limited to how much you can do. So there's got to be ways to work around it with better design. And the story right now is limited, and that's on purpose because we were trying to get a home base to get started. So phase 2, more in the planning phase. We don't have a lot to show you on this one. It's not live right now, but what we're looking to get back to Travis's initial approach that I was so interested in is we have the sites, right? And we have the site map. Now what we're looking to do is we're actually adding the Jackson history component to it. And then eventually we'll add our redlining information and maps that we have. And then what I'm really hoping when we have the gentrification paper that was discussed yesterday by Mason, that we'll be able to visualize that work in this, not only for Jackson, but for the other partners that are interested in that may be set up in a story map. So the Jackson Parks and History was actually one of my other apprentices last summer, but he couldn't make it. So this is partly some of his work. God forbid he got married this week, so couldn't make it here. But he got 3,500 historical files given to us from the city of Jackson that had not seen the light of day after some guy worked 40 years and spent his last year putting all the information together before it was lost. So they're happy just to get it one out of their office to, reward his work and get it out there so people know about it. So analysis, interpretation, using a bunch of historical methodologies that are not biology driven, developing timelines and story bios were created by Nate in a 10-week period, which is pretty remarkable with that. In addition to that, we've now taken that work and partnered with the history department at MSU, their senior fields-based program. I thought it was cool that they call it field-based, even though it's inside, but whatever, it's cool, it's their field, not complaining. Their undergrads took it as their whole class project and they dove into all different parts of this, either select the park or select the topics, like Jackson, and see how they could tie it back if the evidence led them there. Not all of it made it, but most of it made it. And now we're working with the grad students to actually distill that down to digestible pieces. And then we'll provide links to the full piece so the students can get credit for their CV and things like that. So really cool stuff. This is some of the files, just to give you an example of all the stuff. We also have a bunch of invoices and things we probably shouldn't have had, but we made sure those didn't see the light of day and gave those back. But George Ewing is the one that's responsible for all this work. This is just a smattering of info. So all that to say, we're like, man, this is cool. This is great. And then we had our volunteers looking at it, astronautists are like, Adam, what if I just want to look at the critters and I don't really give a damn about the sites? Crap. We didn't think of that as biologists because this is so determined based on sites. We're like, let's see if we can flip this thing on its head. Well, unfortunately, it's not really easy to flip it on its head because it is very site driven. You can do it, but it's clunky and it gets long. So we are working with some partners to see if we can work up some code and also some design features where we can do that. So where we go in the future, we're hoping is you have two options. You come into this, get the intro, and you can go sites or you can go critter map, okay? And everything is critter after this, so bear with me, all right? And then you can get up and tied into the dashboard area where real-time data info, maybe with an API tied to the UN, the new UN network that's coming, or our database, sorry. We'll work on that, but maybe tie to David Drake's work in your website that we mentioned yesterday, where it could tie into the educational resources. And then maybe we can get down to predictive mapping, tying off Chicago's work, looking at conflict hot zones and actually getting into that decision support tool. So that's what we're looking at there. And then ultimately, make the connection. So it doesn't really matter where you enter this in, that you can start crossing back and forth. Now, if anyone that does website design is going, this kid has lost his mind, you're correct, because this is just my vision. I don't know how to do it, but that's pretty much most of my career. I figure it out and we get partners and we go from there. I've lasted 18 years, you know, they can deal with me for another 7 at least. So, okay. But that's where we're hoping this goes. Hopefully it won't blow up. I'm expecting some of it will blow up, but we're moving forward with it. Okay. So our next steps is simply putting QR coding in the parks because we're trying to figure out how these people gonna know about it. Well, that's probably the most likely position to put it. And then additionally, obviously, social media campaigns and pushing it through our partners with that. We're gonna try that first. Obviously, once we get enough use of it, we'll start evaluating it through the form that we have at the bottom and other means with that, and along with expert review. We want to continue our historical review because that review is only of the Jackson area. It's not of our suburban sites, which are key partners. We want to make sure everyone's represented. And then also the really important part, the giving back to the UN network that's given us so much, is we've already got draft forms of the manual of creating the basic version, and then also tutorials that are in draft form that we're putting together. So you have parallel opportunities with that. And then maybe host an online training and transfer that information over. You can use the kind of the kit with that and then go as far as you want to go with that afterwards. And then maybe we'll plug into the mothership UN story map and you can link to everything with that. That's the vision. That's where we hope we're going. It's a pretty cool tool. It's not perfect, but it's just fine for someone that doesn't know GIS. Okay. All right. So more cameras, more critters, more stories is the plan. And I'd like to give acknowledgments to all these partners. I'll take questions.
Are all your cameras on public property?
All my cameras on public property. Most of them are. Yes. Thank you
I'm
for.
just curious about putting
Yes.
a map on private.
Yes.
Or
Thank you.
Non-accessible.
Nope, that's one thing I forgot. That's the caffeine slipping on me. Yes, we do not have our private locations on here. We haven't even broached that. We'll get to that if they want to. Right now, we just went with public sites. And I also strongly recommend that you move those points and don't give them the exact camera location. Yeah, exactly. And part of that is those maps, you don't have to have a geodatabase. So the one that we showed you there and that you're using, that's what they call an express map. You're literally dropping the points. I mean, it's like, it's idiot proof, even for me. And you can move that point around in the park and get it totally away from your camera. Now, it still identifies the park, so there is some risk because some of these cameras just can't hide that well, and we're willing to take that risk. But yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing it up. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I was wondering, given the fact that this is public facing, maybe this is built into this for a program, but like with the ADA requirements and everything for.
Yeah.
something that you kind of work around, run to?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a meeting scheduled soon to go through this. That's why we haven't really pushed this out well. And the person who really, my interns, the first couple of years got it built out. Our geo project extension group is helping us now building up more of the geo database so we can go beyond the express maps. And then I have the person who really got this across the line is hopefully coming back from Japan and will be on staff by August, and let her plug right back in and get this thing to the next step. So. Yes.
Pre-pandemic, again, I'm not tech savvy, but everyone was saying the QR codes were kind of falling to the wayside.
Mhm.
So I don't know if the pandemic with no one wanting to touch a menu and everything. I mean, QR coding and putting that out in the parks, is that going to be?
Yeah, I'm game for whatever the cool thing is. I'm not going to admit that I'm hip. So,
Well, no, I'm just wondering,
yeah.
Obviously, I'm seeing it everywhere I go
Yeah.
now, so it's.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
Maybe there's been a resurgence. I
Yeah,
don't know.
well, that's one reason I'm looking forward, Anne, who's the second co-author, I really wanted her to give this presentation, but she's en route for moving her life back from Japan for a year. So, but if it's a piece of chewed bubble gum that's got something cool in it that gets them interested about it, I don't care. So, but yeah, we'll figure it out, and whatever the newest thing is, we'll try and do that. But something in the parks would make sense with educational signing there to get it started at least. And probably put it on our cameras too. Maybe it'll slow them down from messing with our cameras or not. So, any other questions? 15 seconds, 14 seconds. All right. Thank you. I appreciate the full room. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Dana Strangle. And her presentation is coexisting on the urban interface, your backyard.
Right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm actually also surprised by a full room on the afternoon of Wednesday for a talk that involves no graphs, charts, variables, coefficients, and that was my joke, and everybody had the same joke. Now I got to try a new joke for next time, so I'm going to work on that. Okay. In the meantime, who am I? Why am I here? What's going on? Who's Taringa Ranch? We're going to answer all these questions and more in 15 minutes. Okay. I'm Dana Stengel. I run Taringa Ranch. We save native wildlife in Los Angeles and Ventura counties in very unique ways. How does it switch? Should have been an arrow. Maybe, is it down arrow? That works. Now it works because he's magic. Okay, who are we? Why are we here, right? There's some pictures of me doing some work in the field, a very slight smattering in the many years I've been on this planet doing wildlife work. I am formerly a Peace Corps volunteer. If you're a Peace Corps volunteer, you know I got to put Senegal, forestry, 93 to 95. I've been a wildlife rehabber, a biology teacher, the lead volunteer at a wildlife sanctuary. I spent 20 years there and I focused on wolves, coyotes, and mountain lions. And this particular sanctuary was very hands-on and we did a lot of education with those animals. So I spent a lot of time getting to know these animals' behavior up close and personal. And I also got to see what other nonprofits do that I may or may not agree with. And that is the reason I started my own nonprofit. Currently, I am the founder and director of Taringa Ranch Wildlife, which is my nonprofit. I have some brochures and cards and stickers at the table for later if you would like to learn more. I'm also the founder and chair of the Los Angeles Catio Tour. And that is really my favorite part of today, but we'll get there. Why are we here? These guys, right? These guys are why we're here, right? But there's issues with these guys. And we're all busy thinking about, you know, all these levels of stuff. And I am so much like Skedaddle. I am feet on the ground. I'm getting those calls about these situations that happen in backyards. So that's where we're at. And this is what we're dealing with, right? I know, I want you to take a step back. I want you to take a step way back and think about, where do we get these initial feelings and ideas about wildlife? Why do we want to create a hummingbird feeder that is like a ring that we could wear on our hand that hummingbirds could come to? I wonder where we got that idea. I'm going to think about that for a while. Then I'm going to think about why I don't want to just adopt that little sick raccoon, just bring him in and make him better and make him my pet. I want to see a fox running around in bed sheets. I love that. But we grew up with these images. I was a Jane Goodall. I personally love Jane Goodall and Grizzly Adams. I thought, what a beautiful connection with wildlife. But these are not realistic connections with wildlife. These are special. One is a special situation. One is a situation that never could exist and never did and never will, right? And then the bottom situation, I have no words for. This is what COVID was, friends. This is what was interesting to people during COVID, right? Now, does this involve a raccoon or a coyote? No, that's not sexy. That is not sexy. We don't have a raccoon king. But we do have, where's the coyote? I got raccoons on the roof. They're busting out the coop. This is my reality. So I have a lot of jobs to do because I'm a Peace Corps volunteer. I'm a hole filler. I'm going to try to do them all. We had a situation in Malibu a few years back where one mountain lion took out 10 alpacas in one night. We had a room like this full of animal rights people and ranchers. That was fun. And the ranchers were like, well, you know, nothing like this has happened in 30 years. We've had the alpacas running around unprotected. We've had the mountain lions here. You know, this guy's got to be a problem. And the rest of us are like, you've been lucky for 30 years. How did that happen for 30 years? That's what I really want to know, right? But it's they get used to things. And this is all, again, as we all know, super emotional stuff. Because now all those people are worried, is that mountain lion going to come and take their livestock, their pet, their child? That's what they're really worried about. We have coyotes with mange because people are using rodenticide because they don't know better. We have a big problem. One of the biggest problems my organization deals with in the city of Los Angeles and the county is pet safety. We say it's kid safety, but really it's pet safety. Because when you look at the numbers of situations where things have gone wrong, very few children are attacked by wildlife, right? Like kids are like, oh, they're unpredictable, they're loud. Like kids are the last thing wildlife wants to run into, right? And they're, you know, but pets, we have doggy doors. We leave our pets outside all night long. And we've done it for 10 years and never had a problem, but now we did. So now suddenly it's that wildlife is the problem, right? Not me leaving my animal unattended in my yard for 30 years, right? So these are the situations. Those, you know, what are the challenges? And I'm going to quote myself here, which I know is super lame, but I swear to you, I am the only person who knows this in the state of California. So now you will know it too. And I don't know, maybe somebody else can do something more than I did. There is no grade level within the educational curricular standards for the state of California where students learn about native wildlife. They are far more likely to learn about an elephant or a tiger as a result of their always having a field trip to the zoo, which has nothing going on for native wildlife, just for the record. So this is what we're up against. Right? Vermin and weeds. That's what we call it. That's how we refer to it. That's what it is, right? So why should we think about it as anything different? Other things, these I'm going to skim right through because I already know that you know. Spend 1 minute with Seth Riley, you're done with this slide, right? Habitats get fragmented. These animals can't move across them. We're hitting them with our cars. This is a big challenge. In Los Angeles in 2020, we had our first mountain lion born with a curly tail. We all know what that means. We have a lack of genetic diversity and it's happening quickly. We don't know what's next. That was 2 years ago. Oh, I have a chart. Man. Okay. Percentage of wildlife, and this is an old chart. This is from 2018, but this is the percentage of wildlife exposed to at least one kind of rodenticide, and there are many in the Santa Monica Mountains in 2018. I'm afraid of what it is now. And the Santa Monica Mountains is actually a very rural, very protected area away from the city of LA. There's no reason for this. This is my neighbor. We don't understand how important it is to contain our trash. Poison-free groups like Poison Free Malibu, where we are, has gone around to each individual business owner, asked them to contain their trash, got them to contain their trash, and solved a lot of problems in the city of Malibu just by containing trash. We don't even understand the power of containing our trash. And one of the other things we do is talk to people about what are the attractants. Like this is what yards look like, right? We are feeding birds, we are feeding feral cats, we have swimming pools, we have ponds, we leave dog water outside, and we have debris in our backyards. The lack of education again, the tigers, the elephants, the ranchers, the people who watch stupid shows on TV, and then the trapping, right? Even right now, in the state of California, it is not legal for you to pick up an animal and move it somewhere else. It is not legal there. So it's interesting, every state has their own rules for that, but we are not allowed to do that. So our exterminators will come to you and say, yeah, I'm gonna move it for you. They're not gonna move it for you. They're gonna exterminate it because that's what their license is to do. They are exterminators. It's illegal to move the wildlife. So that poses a problem. What can we do then? They don't know. They really don't know. And why don't they know? This is my driving question. I'm not going to say that I have the answers to this. I'm still trying to figure it out. But what are we doing? How is Taringa Wildlife addressing these challenges in LA and Ventura counties? All right, we're going to start with the basic. We give free educational programs. I do a lot of this everywhere. I do it at nature centers. I do it at scout groups. I do it at schools. I do it at the HOA meeting after the coyote has taken the little dog and everyone is up in arms about that problem coyote. And we talk about taking accountability for your pets, closing up the dog door, using a leash at night, crazy stuff. We clarify on what fences can and cannot do. You would not believe what people think their fences do. They don't understand that wildlife does not recognize their fence as a territorial boundary. And they don't think about the fact, they're like, well, that coyote can't get over my fence. Well, that's a snapping turtle, I'm pretty sure, that seems to be able to get over the fence. So if the snapping turtle can get over the fence, I'm just gonna take bets right now that, I really think that, the coyote can't do. We have a coyote on a roof. We've got flying predators, and we've got foxes that have a fun back leg that can go all these directions and let them climb up and down trees like nobody's business, right? So fence, I don't have time for your fence. We also do some clarification on what are the attractants, what are the deterrents. They're all humane. We use a lot of light and noise for what we do, whether it's in an enclosed area or even outside, it works. That's not how I'm used to changing, keep pressing it. It's not going to go and I'm going to get all weird. And yes, we do have humane hazing discussions. It is a big part of what we do. And I understand that individuals have different ideas about how successful it might be. So I am just going to explain quickly why we do it. What is my philosophy behind it? Basically for me, it is keeping an animal wild. It is the opposite of imprinting an animal. Saying we can coexist, but we're not here to depend on each other, right? It is basic canine training. I have been a canine trainer for a very long time, and basic canine training, hazing is a negative form of that. Feeding would be a positive form of that, and the opposite, right? So it's training, and they are canines, and they are trainable. And it is an animal-like demonstration. How am I not a bear right now? Don't come at me. And they understand that because animals make displays to each other to convey something. This is not anything they don't understand. It's empowering to people. The person who's like, I can't haze a coyote. I give her one of my air horns and she blows that and she's like, all right, I might be able to do that, And it's about building up the confidence because we all know the coyote's not coming for the lady. And it is not just humane hazing. It's important information. It comes together with other stuff. It is just one piece of our toolkit to help keep wildlife wild and help keep people happy about the wildlife that surrounds them. One of the more fun things we do is we take people on field trips. This particular one is Santa Cruz Island. It is an amazing story of people engaging to a point where the island fox was brought to the brink of extinction. And then people engaged again and brought them way back. There's over 2,000 island foxes on Santa Cruz Island, and they're just like feral cats. And it's an awesome place to bring people to see native wildlife. We also do a trip up the coast. In winter in California, we see the monarchs wintering, we see the sea otters with their babies, and we see the elephant seals with their babies. One day trip. People come back and they're like, that's what I want. We do summer camps, not your typical summer camp. This is your biology teacher gets to do all her favorite things at summer camp. So we do owl pellets, we do tracking boxes, we make our own plaster tracks, we do all this crazy stuff. Of course, we practice humane hazing. That's a really good time. We do skits and stuff like that, but it's all based on the native wildlife that these kids are going to find in their backyard. And I do backyard consultations when there's perceived conflict. I got a coyote den in my backyard. I got a raccoon in my attic, right? And just like my predecessor was saying, like every situation is different. And so you got to go, you got to look at it, you got to figure out if you're dealing with it, how you're dealing with it. And basically, and the bottom line for me is we exclude from just around the house. Just around the house. We can't be responsible for the rest of the acre. We can't be responsible. We're just responsible for the area around our house. Coyote rollers, they don't work. I wouldn't put my furry family's life dependent upon it. Same with those little jackets they put on the dog. I don't have time. If you care about your animal, you will be accountable for your animal at all times. And that's what we have to keep putting in to the public's brain. We have a chicken and livestock depredation program. This came out of a time when someone had a mangy bobcat in their yard and they called me to say, hey, what can we do? Can we capture him? Can we fix him? And then the other neighbors shot him dead the next day. And this is the case every time. There's always one neighbor feeding and one NRA neighbor every single time. I'm not even joking, every single time. But when this happens, when the depredation happens, it was a $5 chicken and a bobcat lost his life. So we said, okay, you know what? We are going to reimburse you for your wildlife if you allow us to get there and help you reinforce your situation the right way. We collaborate with like-minded groups. Cities Against Rat Poisons is our biggest collaboration to date. And that consists of a lot of the poison-free groups in the area and other like-minded groups. But we try to get that information out about no rodenticide. And we also learned from the Portland conference. We learned at the workshop for the Portland Catio Tour, what an amazing idea that would be. It is a collaboration between the Audubon and the Feral Cat Coalition, if you can believe that. It seems almost impossible. They are amazing. We have stolen their idea. They're helping us out. And we are bringing it to LA. And so far we have Pasadena Humane on board, Pasadena Audubon, San Fernando Valley Audubon, Fix Nation, Kitten Rescue, Susan Gottlieb Native Garden, and the Catio Guy. We pulled them from every direction. And if you go to that website, which you could find there if you wanted to, you will see we have interviews. We have an interview with the rehab center about cat-caught animals being brought in. We have an interview with Pasadena Humane's animal training manager about how catios enrich cat lives, right? And we have the Catio Guy talking about how to build a catio, and just lots of great information. People are like, why is a wildlife group doing a catio tour? Why indeed? Why indeed? The bottom line is students in K through 12 should be taught about native plants and animals. The general public needs to be exposed to this information consistently and in novel ways. We can't just stand at the nature center and keep giving the talk. That's not enough. We got to be out in the field, providing this education where they are. It's time to replace terms like vermin, nuisance wildlife, and weeds to native wildlife and native plants. What are we doing to eliminate the desire for and easy access to exterminators and trappers? What are we doing about that? Nothing. People need to understand why wildlife surrounds us despite our fences and why that's a good thing. And we can do better. So what can you do? You can reach out to schools and teachers. You can reach out to nature centers, libraries, local nonprofits. I would love a PhD to come and do some stuff with me. Museums, you have so much to offer in all that extra time that I know everybody here has. Sometimes I get politicians in on this stuff. That slide is totally in the wrong place. And this is the one I'd like to leave you with. That published paper, you're so excited about it. You rocked it. It took everything out of you. Now, I want you to make it shorter and I want to bring it down to about a 5th grade level. And then I want you to publish it in the local paper. That's what the public needs from you. Nobody's reading your science journals. I hate to let you know, I'm sorry. You're reading your science journals. Nobody else is. We love you, it's true, and that is my story. I have hazers and fun stickers and brochures up here if you'd like to grab them. You're fine.
Our next, we do need to move along. Our next speaker is Chris Mowry and the Atlanta Coyote Project.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for sticking around. I'm Chris Mowry. I'm a professor of biology at Berry College, and Berry College is just outside of Atlanta in Northwest Georgia. This is not Berry College. This is Piedmont Park, which is Atlanta's version of Central Park, but I'll get to that in a moment. So when I first got to Berry, really was in the late 1990s, and then in the early 2000s, we really knew very little about coyotes. They really weren't on my radar, and it was a student that got me involved. And so we started doing some camera trapping at Berry College. Berry is a really interesting place, beautiful place. It's known as the largest college campus in the world. It sits on 26,000 acres of land. Great place to be a biologist. It is also the site of lots of filming, Stranger Things. Those of you that might be fans of Stranger Things, part of it was recently filmed on Berry's campus. But I started with students in the early 2000s studying coyotes in a rural environment. So these are some of our early camera trap images, film camera traps, by the way. We started seeing these odd animals, didn't quite know exactly what it was at the time. We then launched some collaring efforts. So we put collars on coyotes and did some telemetry studies, again, all with undergraduate students. Again, saw another one of these interesting melanistic coyotes. And then fast forward a few years, in 2012, I was asked by my friend and colleague, Larry Wilson, and Larry and I had gone to graduate school together at Emory University in Atlanta. And Larry was the ecologist at a place called Fernbank Science Center in Atlanta. And he said, why don't you come and give a talk? You know, there's a lot of misinformation out there about coyotes. You know, why don't you come and give a talk and, you know, tell us what you know about coyotes? And so I did. You know, this is again 10 years ago. You know, lots of interest, lots of misinformation. And so after I gave that talk, which was very well attended, Larry said, you know, we really need to, let's work together and let's focus on urban coyote populations. And let's, you know, we felt that there was a void of information, of accurate information out there. And then as biologists, we were also very interested in the role that these animals were playing in the Southeast, because they were relatively recent immigrants into the Southeast after the extirpation of the red wolf. So it took us a few years to kind of get our act together, but in 2015, we formed what we call the Atlanta Coyote Project. And I want to point out that that logo was produced by Henry Adams, and Henry is here in at this conference. Maybe he's in this room, and he was an undergraduate student at the University of Georgia at the time, and he did a great job, and I'm really thankful and grateful for that production of that logo. But we set out in 2015 with a mission, a threefold mission: provide public education and outreach, leverage the public by collecting coyote observations from the public, but then really conducting scientific research. You know, we're biologists, we're academics, and that's really what we wanted to do, but we wanted to use this organization as sort of the vehicle for doing that. So I just want to give you some metrics on how we're going about satisfying those goals over the years, or how we have satisfied those goals over the years. So as far as public education and outreach, we give lots of public lectures. So as some of my colleagues have talked about, you know, local environmental groups, Georgia Audubon, Georgia Sierra Club, local environmental sites, garden clubs, homeowners associations, neighborhood groups. We've given invited seminars, so more academic seminars really all over the nation and some international. We've given lots of radio and TV interviews, both local and more national and some international. I'll tell you why that was in a moment. Lots of print articles in the local newspaper, local magazines, Emory University magazine. So we also speak to lots of school groups. We've had 2 documentary films that have been made about us. And most recently, we were contacted by the Georgia Department of Education and asked to participate, or asked if they could use our website in the 7th grade statewide science curriculum. So this is, I know this is hard to read, but something that thank you. So the 7th graders now throughout the state of Georgia, this is called the 3 Dimensions of Science. And it was really great. The state asked for our feedback. They proposed this, and then we were able to weigh in on it. They were using the word invasive species initially, and we said, no, we don't think that's accurate. And so they were very amenable to using, proper language. And so now, the teachers go to this, they send the students, and it's using our website and using the information that we have about coyotes to do this sort of hands-on directed project. So we're very proud of that. So thank you for recognizing that. We have a very extensive website, and that website is, I don't have a QR code like Adam did. That was a smart idea. But anyway, it's www. We do have a QR code. I'm just not showing it to you. But www.atlantacoyoteproject.org. The website was launched in 2015. We recently went through a redesign, and the redesign, I'm proud to say, was done by my son, Alex Mallory, and he was paid to do it, and he did a really nice job. So go check it out. I want to just show you a little bit about what's involved there. As I mentioned, we've had 2 film documentaries, and we're really proud of this one. Was produced by PBS, Georgia Public Broadcasting. It's a program called Georgia Outdoors, and this particular episode was called Urban Coyotes. And so you can stream it from our website. It's a 30-minute program, and they did a really nice job with it, except they mispronounced my name. I worked with them for 6 months, and they mispronounced my last name. But other than that, they did a fantastic job. So just some things about our website. We have a frequently asked questions. So I'm sure we're all, especially those of us that deal with coyotes, we're all answering the same kinds of questions. And so, are there coyotes in Georgia? Are the animals, we are seeing coy wolves, how big are the coyotes? So this is a go-to site for the public. So lots of information there. But then we really have a very extensive, source of information that we have built up over the years. So we have an all about coyotes section. So size, appearance, activity patterns, ranges, vocalizations, diet, disease, canids and inbreeding or interbreeding. So, anything that someone would want to know, they can find this out from our website. We have a management and coexistence site. So how to coexist with coyotes, why relocation is not an option, why killing doesn't work. So, that's all there. And then, of course, we focus our various research projects. So we're involved, again, we're scientists, we're academics. We have a number of research projects. I'm going to highlight just briefly 3 of those in a few moments. So that's there. People can learn about what we're doing. We post news articles, of interest that we come across. So when there was a solar eclipse, coyotes were responding, which was just fascinating. I don't know if any of you others who study coyotes came across this, but there's a really neat, and this some really neat video of the moment the solar eclipse occurred, the coyotes started howling. And so really cool stuff on there. So, and then we have a report, a sighting section. So we've collected all kinds of data from the public, which I'll show you about in a moment. And then we have a donate button. We don't get a lot of donations, but we do certainly have people that donate to the project, which is very nice. Just some metrics from what our website looks like. This is showing since we launched the project in 2015, which was in July of that year. This is just one metric through Google Analytics. So it, 6,400 unique page views. And you can see that those numbers have grown each year. So in 2021, we were up to nearly 30,000 unique page views. Unfortunately, 2022, Google Analytics went down and we failed to realize it. I just realized it the other day and I got my son on it, So we're back up and running. Unfortunately, it wasn't running when we switched over to the new website, but I suspect, we'll continue that increase in traffic. So we're happy to see that. These are just a few, unique dates or dates, specific dates, looking at some things that happened. I won't go into what those are. There was an incident with a rabid coyote bit a person. And so you can see that there are just some days where we got, really high unique page views because of something that was in the news and people were going to our website for information. So that was nice to see. As I mentioned, the report a sighting portion of the website, this is people that can go to our website and map and report data. And we've published a paper based on this data. So again, the numbers have grown through the years since we launched this in 2015. So we really use the website in that regard to collect data from the public. We have a very active social media site, a Facebook page. I say very active. I'm not as active on Facebook, but we do have 6,211 followers. Interestingly, a vast majority of those are women. But we use it again, just to further disseminate information. And just again, another metric going back to that, it was in 2016, a person was bitten by a rabid coyote. Turned out very unique, rare event. And we were able to kind of talk about that on our website. It was viewed over 40,000 times and shared 350 times. So again, it was just, useful information. We felt like that we could put that out to the public. So I just want to finish by talking about three. So again, the third goal, so we're public education, we're collecting data from the public, but we're scientists, we're conducting research. And so all of these goals are intertwined. We feel like they, feed off of one another. That's ideally what we wanted to do. And so first thing I want to talk about is what was called the Georgia Coyote Challenge. And this is surprising to some people if you're not familiar with it, but the state of Georgia in the year 2017 launched a coyote killing contest. And they incentivized people to go out and kill coyotes, and they incentivized them by offering a lifetime hunting license. Next year was a rifle. So you could win a gun or a lifetime hunting license by turning in the carcass of a dead coyote. Stated goal was to protect native wildlife species. Well, as biologists, we really felt strongly that this was misguided information. We disagreed with it respectfully. And so that time to go to that anyway. So we spoke out against it. We sent a letter to the governor. We sent a letter to the head of the DNR. We didn't get response, but there was a lot of public information, a lot of public outcry, a lot of uproar about it. And, but of course, as scientists, the best pushback is to get something in the literature. And so we were sort of already involved in this, looking at diversity in areas where coyotes existed. And so we just already had this site. It was a suburban green space in Metro Atlanta, about 20 hectares. We knew that there was an active coyote den there. It was a stable, a small population. So we started blanketing this area with cameras. We put cameras on the den site. And again, I won't go into all of this. You can, if you're interested in the paper, it was published in a journal called Urban Naturalist, Species Richness Within an Urban Coyote Territory in Atlanta, Georgia. But the bottom line is that we documented year-round coyote activity. There was a resident pair there. There was an active den. There was reproduction. We started this in 2016 and ran it for 2 years. There was reproduction in both years. We saw high species richness. We documented 12 mammal species, 20 different birds, 2 different reptiles. And so, we use this to sort of inform the public that, this idea that these predators, coyotes in this case, because of their presence, are eating everything in sight, is just not necessarily accurate. And it's not the way we understand how nature works. We know that healthy ecosystems need predators. I realize that the coyote is not necessarily a replacement as an apex predator in the Southeast for the red wolf, but we believe that it's fulfilling some of that role. So that was a project that we were involved in. Secondly, UN, of course, we are the part of the UN network. We established our transect in 2019 across Metro Atlanta. And I will say that our presence and the website really facilitated our ability to set up our transect. Because of the report of sightings data, we were able to lay that, all of those publicly reported sightings where many people left contact information. And as we were trying to establish camera sites, we could say, well, where do we need a camera? Oh, somebody reported a coyote here. Maybe they'll be amenable to allowing us to put a camera in their backyard. And that proved to be very effective. So again, we leveraged our website and our public education and public outreach to further this research project that we're involved with UN. And so, which, by the way, we're very happy to be involved with. So the last thing I want to talk about is Carmine. And so I'll just give you a little background information. In late 2019, so right before COVID hit, late December of 2019, we started receiving reports again through our website of this animal roaming around Metro Atlanta in the Smyrna Vinings neighborhood. This is very close to the Atlanta Braves Stadium. It's one of the busiest parts of Atlanta. And so we were getting these reports. If anybody can tell me the significance of that picture, you win the prize. I'll give you a hint. It's not a Marvel character. So, well, that is Carmine, and he comes from a show called Laverne and Shirley. Many of you are too young to remember that, perhaps, but some of you are still around. And so the woman who first, so what was unique about Carmine is he was exhibiting friendly behavior. We didn't know really what he was at the time. He was going through doggy doors. He was jumping into backyards. He was following people who were walking their dogs. So he was exhibiting this playful behavior. And so I'm going to show you, hopefully, this. Watch this video. So this is Carmine, and that is a Great White Pyrenees dog. And this is the kind of behavior that he was exhibiting. You can see non-aggressive. There was not any sort of reproductive behavior going on. So anyway, very interesting situation. People were threatening to shoot him. He was, on a very busy area. We knew something about melanistic coyotes already. I had published a paper in 2014. We knew there was a higher occurrence of melanistic coyotes in the Southeast. So we decided to try to intervene. We got permission from the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. And these are, again, publicly reported sightings. It took us 6 weeks. So it was in late February that we eventually caught him in a box trap. You can see Interstate 75, Interstate 285, the blue is the Chattahoochee River. So he was roaming all around, and we eventually caught him, and we caught him because we had a place to take him. And that was a place called the Yellow River Wildlife Sanctuary. We normally would not have intervened in the life of a wild animal, of a wild coyote, but we knew this was not going to end well. And so we were given permission to do this. And so we decided to intervene. Again, it took us 6 weeks, but we got him. We took him to this site. There was already a resident coyote at the site that was a female, spayed female. And it gave us an opportunity to learn more about this animal. And we published a paper about this animal, which you can also find. But I'll just tell you, what did we learn from this? Well, it was a great opportunity. It was right as COVID was hitting. And it was a great opportunity, I believe, to show the public how science is done all over social media. that's not a coyote, you moron, that's a dog, and, all of these things. And so, well, what do? We partnered with our colleague Bridget Von Holt at Princeton University. Once we caught Carmine and we genetically analyzed him, and we did indeed show that Carmine is a coyote. We also determined that he was a male. We learned about the movement and ranging pattern of this animal. We verified the genetic basis of this black phenotype. We know that it does have a genetic basis. Carmine is heterozygous for the trait. So we were able to verify that. We also looked along with Bridget, if you're familiar with her work, she's looking at the presence of hypersocial genes in wolves and coyotes. We're looking for that gene in Carmine. We did not find it. We might be looking on the wrong chromosome, but very interesting. And so finally, Carmine can teach us by being a public ambassador for coyotes. So he's at Yellow River Wildlife Sanctuary. If you're ever in the Atlanta area and you want to stop in and visit him, fascinating animal. We did neuter him, but he's under great care. And so we're not, looking to breed more coyotes. So, and this is the paper that came out of that Interface of Human Wildlife Interactions, an example of a bold coyote in Atlanta, Georgia. And so finally, I just want to recognize that we partner with a number of local environmental organizations in Metro Atlanta area. But I want to point out at the bottom, Providence Farm, they're in North Carolina, but they are a family farm that uses livestock guard dogs to protect their livestock. And so this is a recent partner of ours, and it's been very effective, because we get those kinds of questions about, well, I've got chickens or I've got, sheep, how do I protect them? And so anyway, so we partner with organizations that we can help to share that whatever they have to offer with the public as well. So with that, I'll end, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you. Yes.
Did Carmine have any red wolf ancestry?
So other than, sort of distant coyote, yeah, so a little bit. Yes.
Did you have any reason to believe that he wasn't raised by human disease?
We did
Does
not,
that make you fear? I've never heard of a hypersocial gene.
right.
I have heard of, let's try this out.